So describe your experience as a judge this year, 2023
Yes.
Enactus Nationals.
Yeah.
What has impressed you about the nominees and finalists?
Oh wow. Okay. I'm really glad they had a lot of other judges from other organisations, because it's very easy to be a little bit biased towards your own institution, and for good reasons, because the projects are really amazing, right? So Enactus, this is my very first time, so I thank whoever nominated me to be a judge. So thank you very much. I'm not sure who did that, but it was a great experience. Super impressed by VU's contribution, considering where we sit in terms of the others and the resources. Not just the resources in terms of students, but the people who staff to help students, and then also the infrastructure compared to Melbourne and Monash. It just goes to show that you don't need immense amounts of resources to be successful. You just need a bit of drive and innovation. And I think all the money that we put into this, so the shredder, very small cost in the big scheme of things, and then the molds and the injection molder, amazing piece of equipment, but very, very small, but making a huge difference, repurposing plastic that would normally be thrown out. I was impressed with VU's contribution, amazing.
Second question is, you have achieved several outstanding milestones throughout your career. What prompted you to change your mind and join Victoria University?
Well, that's a good question. Probably similar to what others are like. So if I go back 2 years, it was 2 years that I learnt about the job that I'll be taking at Victoria University. There's a couple of things. So one thing is, VU is a really cool institution. Students, this is about opportunity, right? And that's what Victoria University does, provides opportunities to an enormous number of students who not normally would have that opportunity. And that's one thing that really attracted me. The other thing is, it was post-COVID, so I thought, people were locked down, the world was miserable, and I thought, what better thing to do is to reset with a new job and a new opportunity to take something forward. And look, it's been amazing. I mean, working at VU has been incredible. And the students are really what it's all about. And yourself and other students, part of the Enactus team, I love that, because all volunteers, you don't get huge amounts of accolades. In fact, you have to fight for everything you get and to keep. And I get that. This is because it's the nature of Victoria University. It's a very small institution. So all credit to the students. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a part of an institution where students are actually at the forefront of innovation, and you're doing it despite, difficult times, really. I mean, resources are very tight for yourself, and look what you've created. Look what the student cohort has created. Amazing, even the garden, which I can't wait and go see, actually.
Yes, we're going to show you the pulp and paper project, and after you, the garden, and then I promise we'll let you go, because I know you're a very busy man.
It's all good.
What advice would you provide to students at Victoria University who wish to follow in your footsteps?
Don't do what I've done.
Well, you're very popular. You made a lot of achievements.
And
you were brave with making changes in your career.
No, that's true. I think you've got to be brave. That is true. And I don't know if I'm popular, but I do tend to.
The students like you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's very kind. But you know what? I enjoy hanging out with students, because I jokingly say one really good thing about working at a university is that students never get old. But the truth is that when you get older, I find, especially with any student, regardless of what the project is, because what you're doing is doing exactly what I did when I was much younger. And I did other things, so I didn't have the opportunity to do whizzy, injection molding and shredding. Making really, recycling paper and making really cool, very bespoke books out of it. But what I did other things. I went up and did a radio program at the University of Canberra when I was a student, and did other things to create a community around you, right? So as an undergraduate student, I would do a radio program for a few hours. a week, and it was the best thing. And then all of a sudden, people get to know you, and they talk about your content. Then they would provide you content, and and it's just creating a beautiful university life for students, right? And you're doing exactly that. I think the only thing I would say, I have a high tolerance for risk, so I tend to take big risks, and sometimes risks pay off, and sometimes they don't, unfortunately. But the good thing about everything you do is you learn, and you take that learning into the next role that you take, and that's what I've always done. But before I went to university, I was a motor mechanic. I worked on cars, Holdens, Hyundais, Saabs. So I spent 11 years as a motor mechanic before I went to university. So I had a whole life before then. And so when I went to university, it really made a big difference to my work, because I thought I would never go to uni. And so that's why I like hanging out with students who are keen to do things for other students, because it shows a great depth. Well, it's almost like a selflessness. And a colleague said the other night to me, he said, in this world, there are givers and takers. And they said, well, I think you might be a giver. And I said, well, I might be a giver. I don't know. I never thought about it that way. But I think we all are. I mean, what you're doing here now with Enactus and here at VU, you're just giving not only to other students, but you're actually giving to the planet as well by doing this recycling.
You have inspired a lot of people and students to make a change. Who was your inspiration?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry for being so emotional, but life is funny how the emotions sit there. There's a very lovely person, my Auntie Pat and Uncle Ray. Of course, my parents made a big difference to me. The person who made the biggest difference, Amin, to me was when I lived in Taree. I worked as a motor mechanic. There was two lovely Aboriginal elders who I really admire, and they're very close friends. Auntie Pat passed away, that's why I get upset when people ask that question. That was unexpected, that emotion. So sorry about that. But Auntie Pat and Uncle Ray saw an advertisement for cadetships, for Aboriginal cadetships in Canberra, and you get an opportunity to work for the public service, and then you also get to do a university degree. And I was pretty confident that I would not be university material, but Auntie Pat and Uncle Ray were convinced that I should actually give it a go. So I am forever grateful, because what they did, Amin, they actually cut out that advertisement and they physically wrote away to the federal government and got the application form for me. And they filled it out, gave me a reference, and then I had to go get myself a second reference, fill out the rest of the bits that they didn't know about me. And then I set the paperwork away, and the rest is really history. So I do what I do because I think they made a big difference to my life, and I love the opportunity to do that for as many other people that I can, because there's so much opportunity in the world. Just the world's not fair, and the more you can create a more level playing field and make it fairer, the better it is for all of us, by the way. And for us who have got different backgrounds, it's even harder, sadly. It really is. That's the nature of the world. If you look different, sound different, act different, people make assumptions, and it's really tricky to get around the world. Then not everyone sees eye to eye, but that's what I try to do, is try to get them to think differently, and I think most people do.
Thanks for sharing the story about your auntie. And I haven't informed you, we ran a pilot project a couple of months ago with the purpose of protecting country and respecting the custodianship of the First Nations people. We named that project Guardians of Nature. Oh. So what happens is we take the VU shuttle bus, we take the students to countryside around Australia or national parks. Australia, Melbourne National Park, and we collect garbage from the nature so animals don't get there. It's been such a success, but we are hoping to be able to get a grant for it next year so we can run that bus excursion every month. What would you suggest to a new young project like that, to be more inclusive? People who are from First Nations, who never heard of this, who are kind of disconnected, they never get communicated to, or people from marginal groups, Polytech, students with English as a second language. How can we get them more
Yeah.
involved? What is
Well,
your advice for us?
So I think, one of the things I know is you spend a bit more time with the Aboriginal community, and look, you've got a great resource here with Medali Ballet. I'm happy, if you engage with them, happy to facilitate an engagement if you like, so you can see. But there'll be students in that group that would love to help. Again, with the students from a culturally diverse background, again, just having conversations with I'm sure you've got different societies and groups where you can have an interaction or intersection with those and say, look, this is a project that we're doing. We'd really love for you to be a part of this as well. I'm sure you will get many more people interested. But this generation is definitely very, very interested in how can you make the planet and the environment a better place for all of us. And that is something that you'll get a lot of support for. I'm very confident of that.
How do you deal with the stress, having so many obligations while being professional?
That's a really good question. How do you cope? It's tricky sometimes, to be honest. You don't always get the opportunities that you think you will, but then other opportunities will come. It's interesting when you're in a leadership role, because sometimes you feel that you have to be different to who you really are, and I've learned that that's not a good thing. It's much better to be yourself. Otherwise, it's hard to gel and fit in, because you can only compromise so much, and you can take a different or a strategic approach, but you can't compromise forever. I think the best way to answer that, Amin, is that some of my family would say to me things like, "You're one person at work and you're another person at home," and I really struggled to understand what that really meant for a long time. But I do realise that I can go home and whinge and complain as much as I like, but I would not do that here, because that would get me nowhere. I've got to come up with the solutions and come up with the ideas. How if there's a roadblock, how do I get around the roadblock and continue to do what I do? How do I ruffle a few feathers? And just really deliberately provoking people and in a provocative way, but in a kind, strategic, provocative way to say, you know what, this is not good enough. And we need a better approach. And so, balancing is exactly that. It's a bit of a tightrope at sometimes, and I'm not always good at picking the right approach. But I've also learned there's so many things that have to happen to be successful. It is really unusual, and people sometimes think that your career is quite linear, but mine's been. I've taken bigger roles and lesser roles, and more pay than less pay, and sideward steps and backward steps, and it's never been 1, 2, 3. But some people I know that they say, I'm not going to go for another job until it's the next one up. Well, that's a silly thing to do, because how long are you going to wait for the next one up? What, 10 years, 5 years, 20 years? Why not step sideways and go 3 steps up, which is what I've done many times. Go sideways and then go 3 steps up, or 2 steps up, or go find something else to do that's completely different.
So my understanding is you're pro change, and kind of
Yes.
against sitting on your hand.
Always.
Yes.
And always looking for opportunities for change and growth.
Yes.
Not just in myself, but for the organisation, for the people around me as well.
What are your thoughts on Enactus clubs as in Victoria University?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think, of course, last year was my very first time to be a judge, and I was over the moon to be invited. I was really chuffed. But there was a lot of judges too, right? There's like 60 judges or something. It was pretty full on.
Yeah, from around the country.
I was impressed. It wasn't just Victoria. It was like right, and then the structure about how you do presentations and grade them, and such a professional organisation, right? I was so impressed, because not only are those projects really important, but the structure of Enactus as well, where you got an alumni of Enactus as the president or the chair, and and the board and the structure, and that is really beautiful, because that means it's born out of student projects. You've taken that person into a leadership role, and then they give back to the community. And I'm sure Enactus would not pay huge amounts of money, even at the national level. It's a very grassroots, like really values-driven project. I would love to see VU consider, supporting Enactus a little bit more, not just financially, but actually helping the students in Enactus develop their leadership and show them, give them an opportunity. What does leadership look like? How can we develop your leadership? Because people like yourself and others in Enactus are really the future of the university, right? Because you're at the forefront of research, you're doing really great. You're adding huge amounts of value to the institution by recycling. Like, it's just incredible. I think, better facilities, you know what, you don't have to just raise it internally. You have local members of parliament who would be interested in the work that Enactus does here for you. Even your local council, like Maribyrnong Council, those places, and our other councils where our footprint is, they will be interested in what we're doing in terms of recycling, making the world a better place. And then how do we bring them on a bit of a journey so they can support us as well? We don't always have to look at the university to support. There's always, and I think, Amin, if I can say, one thing that I have learned in my time in universities is that, and this is what I learned when I was a student as well, is as a student, you don't realise the voice that you have. And I would encourage you to use that. I would encourage you. So as a student, you have a very strong voice because the university is not here for staff. But the university would not exist if it wasn't for the students. And we should encourage students to actually add to the student life, like things like Enactus, and there's lots of other programs as well. But Enactus is a really great platform. But I can say one thing, but what's really interesting is this is again my perspective of the world. So you can often find someone like you or others who have worked in a group like this, because we don't all get along, right? And we have disagreements and different views and perspectives. But navigating that is a life skill that will keep you forever. Like, one of the best skills I've ever learned was, how do you negotiate in conflict? How do you persuade people, to get to where you want to go to? And sometimes it can be easily. Sometimes, how am I going to convince this person that that my value is your value, and we're going to go do this together? And that's not always easy. But you can tell when you employ somebody, and they've worked in a position like you have, or others have worked in a position, you can tell because they're ready to negotiate and compromise. Where someone hasn't had that experience, they'll argue and say why. And they go, well, if I need to explain that to you, probably the wrong job for you. So if they don't understand the idea of negotiation and compromise, it's a life skill. So what you're doing is a life skill that's amazing.
What have you learned today or recently about recycling and reusing plastic, and what that you wish you knew earlier?
I have to say that I looked at that board, and there are different grades. I knew there were different grades of plastic, but I thought plastic was plastic and you can melt it all together and it would all stick together, but it doesn't. They're different grades, so I think now, okay, so that's one thing. Overabundance of blue bottle caps. I think we need to lobby the milk companies and say, you need to put different bottle caps on over Christmas. So not all pots come out blue. No, I'm joking. But I'm so impressed just how quickly you can actually remold something.
Yes. I'm
surprised by that, how quickly it is.
Yes.
Just dip it in here, shred it, heat it up, 192 degrees, done. That's unbelievable. So you can imagine on a major scale where this could be really exciting.
My observation throughout the years in different communities being we are not very capable species in terms of communication. And as you can see, great division in different organizations in different scale, from top to the bottom.
Yeah, great.
How do we fix that communication problem? How can I get my message across to you without having to put a fight with you or without being stubborn on my idea?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's been bothering me for many, many years.
You know what? If someone had the solution, an easy solution to that, they'd be very rich. The truth is, you probably noticed that I would tend to listen a lot to people, interact, and there's a reason for that. And this is what I do, right? This is what I do. I tend to listen to people, hear their issues, hear their challenges, and then we'll try and find out a solution, right? And it doesn't always work. You know, there's some operational areas of the university that are always going to be operational, and they're always going to face the same challenges regardless. So it's one thing I've learned too, is, you know, the more jobs I have, the more they look the same. Even though they're different jobs in different aspects, universities are all very similar. There's not a lot of difference. We're all selling Bachelor of Arts. We're all selling Masters of Arts. We're all selling a PhD. We're all saying we're the top tier, we're the greatest, we're the most wonderful. But there are some things around the periphery that do make a big difference. So say for example, and a really good example is Victoria University, where we just won just recently, as last week, 2 platinum awards from LearnX. So LearnX is a company or an organisation. They give out awards, but it's not just for universities. These are all like BHP, Toyota. They all submit these awards, right? Big organisations, big institutions. And we won 2 platinum awards for our approach to 2 learning modules this year. And we took a very different approach. So yeah, thanks to my team, what we did, we took an approach where we actually got people with lived experience to actually be in the modules. So we're addressing the cultural inclusion module around racism, and also with the LGBTQI place, the cultural and inclusion. Every one of those people in the videos had lived experience.
Yes, I've done that module. It's such a fantastic module.
It's good.
Yes.
And it's really, really fascinating that we won 2 platinum awards for that, just because we took a very different approach. So I think there's different, and today we launched the Our Watch partnership, which we, for 5 years, so that's something my team has done. And we launched that today, at lunchtime today, at 12 o'clock today, with a podcast with the Vice Chancellor and Paddy Kingsley, the CEO of Our Watch. And the idea of Our Watch is to embed policies and processes, and in curriculum and in conversation, about how do we address gender-based violence, how do we stop men from killing women. And that's a really huge issue, not just in Australia, it's right across a lot of the countries, right? So, and it's about building gender equity, making sure. So while I say that universities look similar, or very similar, there are some things that are quite different in that aspect. So in terms of negotiation, I think my skill set is trying to be quite empathetic, try to listen, try to get your head around what the problem really is, and you're going to see it very different to the person holding that problem. So if you're explaining me a problem that you have, I'm going to see it very different to you. It's just the way it is, because my worldview is different to your worldview, and that's and it's tricky. There's no solution to workplace conflict or necessarily, but I don't think. I mean, this is where I think also. I think when I was much younger, I always thought conflict was bad, but it's not all bad. As long as it's respectful, right? Conflict as in physical conflict is always bad. But if you have different ideas, a contest of ideas that you don't agree upon, that's not necessarily bad, because sometimes in that conversation will come something quite different that neither of you will think about. You think, oh, that's a great idea. Why didn't we think about that before? So it's just trying to find the common ground. It can be difficult, and if I'm really honest, I hate conflict, and I used to try and avoid it like the plague, but now I tend to embrace a little bit of it. Not always. I don't go out on my road to cause conflict, but if there's something I really believe strongly in, I tend to be a bit more stubborn now than I used to be, and the idea is to try and come up with a solution. And eventually you do come up with a solution. It's not perfect, always, but you will come up with a solution. From when you're very born to, when you die, you're always going to have to compromise on something. You just got to find your happy space in that compromise.
Thank you for watching. If you'd like to learn more about EnactusVU, please follow us on our social medias.